There is an ancient prehistoric wall located in southeastern Tennessee. It's located north of the Cleveland, Tennessee area. It is a buried wall. It is known as the Chatata Wall, Chatata, Chatata Wall, and it had ancient writings on it. And some of the writings on it appear to be ancient Hebrew letters. So it's of special interest to those interested in the Book of Mormon, and it may be evidence for the Book of Mormon. I'll share with you the information we have on it and see whether it relates to the Book of Mormon. So if you Google the Chatata Wall, you'll find a Wikipedia entry for Chatata. Chatata is a Cherokee word. It means clear water, and it was used for a location in Bradley County, Tennessee. Bradley County is in the southeastern portion of Tennessee, and it's now the area that was called Chatata, which the Chatata Wall is named after, is now called the Tasso area. In this Wikipedia section, I'll skip over the parts about current and talk about why it's famous archaeologically. So as it says here, the name Chatata is significant because of the Chatata Wall, and it gives you a little bit of basic information on it, how it was excavated in 1891, or at least partially excavated then. It was found, it was on farmland. It is a wall made of sandstone, and this wall was about 1,000 feet long. There were symbols inscribed on the sandstone. There's a New York City professor named A.L. Rawson who came in and studied the site in the 1890s, in particular in 1891, and then until he died in 1902. And Rawson, after making illustrations of the wall, the portions that they could see, and he looked at the writings, he felt that they were Hebrew. He thought that it could be lost 10 tribes. And in Wikipedia, it says the Smithsonian rejected the inscriptions. They rejected the idea that they were Hebrew. They felt and said that they were natural occurrences and not even letters. I'll give you pictures of the site, and you'll see that conclusion didn't make any sense. But anyway, the Smithsonian rejected the site, so it ended up getting reburied. And as it says here, is faded from the limelight. Very few people know about it now. They say in here that its exact location is unknown. I'll give you some information later that shows that it appears to have been found again. So there are some people that know where it is, but it's not being archaeologically examined. Okay, and so let's first show you where this wall exists. So it is located north of Cleveland, Tennessee, in southeastern Tennessee. Let me back out. This is in Google Earth. Okay, so here we have Tennessee, and in this southeastern portion of Tennessee, northeast of Chattanooga is a town called Cleveland, and then north of Cleveland and west of Charleston is where this wall was found, and it was on a ridge next to the Hiwassee River. This is the Hiwassee River that goes by Charleston and then comes down. Now they have since built a dam there, and there's now the Chickamauga Lake. But it was somewhere in here in a ridge along the Hiwassee River. The exact location I don't know, but I'll give you the information we have on it. Okay, so as indicated in the Wikipedia article, the key person to look at the site was a professor named A.L. Rawson. And let me just go back to that Wikipedia site. When you go down into, so it gives the references. When you go down to those references, it was things written by A.L. Rawson in 1891 and 1892. And if you follow those links to those, you can get um, ebook versions of his reports. The first one in 1891, this was to the New York Academy of Sciences, and he gives some information about his visit there. And I'm not going to go ahead and read that because we'll get more detailed information in a bit. But he gives some illustrations that Rawson made of some of the writings that were on there that were found on that wall. And then in a subsequent one for the American Antiquarian in 1892, he gives additional information on it. He misspells Chatata here, but um, anyway, he talks about the story, and I'll go ahead and recite some of what's in here. So the site was found by the farmer. It was on a farm owned by the Hoopers, the Hooper farm. And in March of 1891, Mr. Hooper was pulling up rocks. He was going to use on the farm. He found a rock that had some markings on it. One of the markings on it had sort of a symbol, sort of like the infinity symbol, which he looked was unusual. He thought it might be a gravestone or a headstone or something. And so he dug it up, and then he found this wall underneath it with additional writings on it. So he ended up contacting a local reporter who came out and looked at it too. The news spread, and that got the attention of A.L. Rawson, who was a New York professor, and he ended up. It's a little question about how he heard about it. It appears that he was in that Cleveland, Tennessee area and heard about it. But anyway, he went out to the site in May of 1891, so within a couple of months of that, and then he ended up doing an excavation. He got a hold of the Smithsonian, and the Smithsonian had one of its people, J. Hampton Porter, take a look at it as well. Dr. Porter confirmed the inscriptions on it. A piece of the wall was taken back to the Smithsonian. And then what happened was the Smithsonian, and I've gone into this in other videos, the Smithsonian was very hostile to the idea of the Native Americans having any connection to the Hebrew or lost tribes. They also were hostile to the idea of the Native Americans having sophisticated language or written language prior to Columbus. And so the Smithsonian took the position that it's either a fake or a forgery, and those inscriptions on the rock, they said, could just be natural formations like mollusks going through the clay that was on the sandstone and so forth. So they rejected it. Now, they gave that information out and saying that it was not authentic. And so people lost legitimate archaeological interest in the site. There were looters that were coming and trying to like take pieces of the wall and stuff. So the farmer, Mr. Hooper, ended up reburying the wall, and it kind of got lost to history for a while. But so that's the basic story of what happened. But talking here, so Professor Rawson, again, this was the top stone well, there was more than one top stone, and apparently they were evenly placed about each 30 feet along the top of the wall. The inscriptions were apparently on towards the north end of the wall, so it's 1,000 feet long wall that they were able to find but it was the north end that had the writings and inscriptions on the wall. The wall was made of sandstone with the bricks being about 2 feet by 2 feet and about 8 to 10 inches thick. And then they were connected in like a three ply. And the writings were between two of the plies. So what appears to have happened was that the wall was built, there were writings made on it, and then a clay was put on, and a third layer was put on to cover it up. And it's interesting as to why that would happen. There's the possibility of someone trying to cover up the writings that were on the wall and covering it over with another layer of the wall. Okay, so anyway, the stones were, as indicated there, about 8 to 10 inches thick, and there was a red clay cement in between them. And anyway, there's the story there that you can get to. Again, there was a type of cement that was used. Now, that's an interesting thing because there have been people that have said that, well, the Book of Mormon says that they use cement, but there's no evidence that they use cement. Well, that's not true. It was just a different type of cement. Here's an example of a red clay type of cement that was mixed with something. And apparently, has lasted for this whole time. Also, don't forget when the Angel Mormonite shows Joseph Smith where the golden plates are at the Hill Cumorah, the box that the plates were kept in, Joseph Smith said had a type of cement in it as well. So there are examples of a physical cement being used. But anyway, he gives the account. He talks about how the Smithsonian ended up writing back and rejecting it as being authentic. But the Dr. Porter of the Smithsonian did authenticate the use of these inscriptions, these symbols on the wall. And that's what's interesting is if you look at some of these symbols, some of these are similar to ancient Hebrew letters, and potentially also on some of the characters on the characters document, if you're familiar with the characters document. Now, yeah, so let's go back to those. Now, there is a website called the Book of Mormon Heartland. It's by Brian Nettles. He also has a YouTube channel. He has a copy of this same article reproduced there that you can find in, and a little better pictures. And then he also reproduces on here the characters document, so you can kind of see, for example, how like this has this sort of an H-like symbol, and some of these other type symbols that show up, see, in the characters document. So there could be some potential overlap there. Also, in terms of Hebrew writing, this symbol here looks like Paleo Hebrew. Now, imagine this as being like a person with arms raised. So imagine this is like a stick figure with the legs and the arms raised here. And then if you take a look at the Paleo Hebrew alphabet, this was the early description for this Hey letter. It's an individual with the arms raised and like a praising position, which then later becomes the current Hebrew alphabet. Likewise, going back to it, this is another one that looks a lot like this kind of Y shape, So I'm not an expert on those languages, but it definitely looked like they could include some Paleo Hebrew type lettering, and I'll get into that a little bit more in just a second. You can access old newspaper articles about the find. I've accessed this through the newspapers.com site. So in the local Chattanooga, Tennessee newspaper in 1920, here's an example of an article about the find of the Chatata Wall out at the Hooper farm there. And as you can see, that the question is this the lost tribes of Israel, so forth. And if you scroll down, it talks a little about here. They thought the wall was 700 feet long, later indicated closer to 1,000 feet. And it talks about how the professor felt like the hieroglyphics were, from ancient Hebrew. It gives a little bit of information about the finding of the site. It gives a little information about the cement with the red clay. Talked about how the red clay, the cement was still holding it together. It wasn't gritty. It had some acidity, so it's a different kind of a cement than we're familiar with or was normal for Europeans to use. And then it talks about how Professor Rawson ended up hiring a staff of experts to try to translate the writings and inscriptions. He paid out $35,000, which is a lot for that time. And that he said that the experts that he worked with, deciphering it, just found it to be a form of Old Hebrew and include inscription of religious and historical nature written by scribes of a nation then at war and about to become extinct. Each of the characters on it was 3 to 5 inches tall. Now, unfortunately, this translation, this work by these individuals has been lost. So all we have is the report that he gave of what they said. We don't have any of the actual translation. And then he gives his opinion that it was there for 4,000 years. He talks about how when it was found and they did the excavation, there were huge trees 3 feet thick along the surface edge of the wall, and that some of the writing, he said, was so covered with stuff that it had to be cleaned to be able to see um, the writings on it. So it was pretty clear that it was an ancient wall. And then here's another one. This was just the week after, also in the Chattanooga Daily Times. And this newspaper article is pretty good in giving some details and also better pictures. So we're going to focus in a little bit more on this. And in particular, look at the image that he's drawn there. So they've depicted, and Professor Rawson also was an illustrator and artist. So he was the one that created these drawings. And so this kind of depicts the farmer, Mr. Hooper, finding the writing. It had sort of like an infinity symbol on it and some writings. He then digs down, and then underneath was the wall. These writings were going up in a diagonal sense with sort of lines in between. And each of these was a few inches in height. You can see, in looking at this again, many of these symbols are similar to what you see in Paleo Hebrew and in the characters document. So like in the characters document, you see a number of these similar types of symbols that you get in the document. But anyway, so these were the things that he found. And I'll just scroll down. Also near the wall, there was some images. It looks like praying figures that were there. And again, you can see these are clearly writings of some kind. And this is another one of the Paleo Hebrew type letters. These also fit. Again, going back to these symbols. And yeah. All right. So anyway, let's go down and you can see more of it. All right. And so that's the depiction that was there. Now, also apparently not too far away from where it was found, a plate was found that also had these writings on it. Again, with a number of Paleo Hebrew symbols, you have sort of these X, Y shape, this sort of circle with a line down through it. All of these they fit sort of these type Hebrew symbols. Here, where's the one with the line down through it? It's here we go, this one. See that? How it matches the figures that were on these things near there. So it could be a really good find that relates to the Book of Mormon in showing a Paleo Hebrew writing that's pretty well authenticated. Again, it's well authenticated because it was found not by members of the church. It was in a place where you can't really have faked it. It was Professor Rawson talks about how the ground where the wall was found was undisturbed. There were 3 feet high trees on top. It was excavated with other people present. The Smithsonian sent someone out. They kind of verified the location and the writings. So all of that part was good. It's just that the Smithsonian did not accept that the writings that they were deliberate writings, which is kind of a ridiculous conclusion if you look at the types of the writings. So anyway, there is a little additional information. There's a site called Hooper Connections that had some information. It has transcriptions of some of the other newspaper articles from the 1890s and the 1920 time period about them. And so you can look at that if you need to. Now, there have been a number of people that have said, oh, this was all a fake. The wall never existed. This is just a made-up thing. There appears to have been a couple of people who went back and looked to see if they could find the wall, and they said that they were able to find the wall, and I'm going to share that with you. This is a video. It was this one by Terry Carter, Ancient Text Written on This Buried Giant. He talks with 2 individuals who were from that area, who knew the story, who decided to see if they could go find the wall. Their names are Nathan King and John Galley. And I'll play a portion of the video so you can see what they found.
I'm Nathan King, this is John Galley, and we started AU Expeditions, and it's just a group that goes out and explores off the beaten path places. And a lot of times it's historical is what we're mainly interested in. So
that gives an idea of who they are, and then they'll give a little bit of their story about
right. A few years ago, we got interested in a project, something called the Chatata Wall, something out of Bradley County, Tennessee, that everyone's been interested in, and they thought it was a legend because it's been missing for over 100 years. But
they're showing their finding of the wall, so you can see a picture of what the wall looks like, how it's under the ground. They found it.
But anyways, we got interested, started researching it. We're able to find it in the fall of 2018. But it's the story goes, Mr. J.
He's going to go over the story a little bit, which I gave you in better detail. So I'm going to skip just a little bit, but I'm going to jump to the 125 mark.
Is finding strange symbols on this rock, so it intrigued him even more, and he started.
So this is the picture of the wall as they were able to find it. So they went out, they were able to find it in 2018, and they were able to find the sandstone rock, and you can see some of the inscriptions that they see on the sandstone wall. Now, what you'll see here is that this is a different portion of the wall than what we had depicted by Professor Rawson. But even with this different portion, you still see what looks like Paleo Hebrew symbols on it. And I'll just point to a couple of these. So, for example, if you see this, it sort of looks like a sideways K. That is the way that the Aleph used to be presented. It's sort of like a K there. And likewise, see, you can see sort of another one of the X type symbols, and that's like the Tav in Paleo Hebrew writing. So it does appear to, and here's another one. So it's sort of like the W shape here, which is in the Paleo Hebrew the Shin. Yeah. So it does look like the wall does have some Paleo Hebrew lettering mixed among other writings and symbols, which we can't decipher, which hasn't been deciphered. But let me continue with the video a little bit more.
Started digging down, and he found what looked like a wall that ended up stretching this whole ridge line out by the Hiwassee River. And
then he goes a little bit more about the location, that it was along the Hiwassee River. I'm going to jump to the 226 mark. Well, he picks up, this comes from that article that I was showing you.
Shortly after, I think within 3 years, Mr. A.L. Rawson passed away. Excavations stopped. Mr. J.H. Hooper, being excited about it, ended up sending part of the wall to the Smithsonian, who within a few weeks discredited it, saying it was just worms going through the rocks, and sent it back. So it kind of turned into a disappointing thing. People, back then they believed the Smithsonian and everything they did.
And we have talked about how the Smithsonian basically stopped the further research on the wall. Okay, we're going to jump a little bit more, and this part we'll talk about how it became a legend and people started to think that the wall didn't even exist.
And people were taking pieces of the wall home, so J.H. Hooper ended up covering it back, and it ended up becoming kind of a legend there in the Bradley County, Tennessee, that region, and was forgotten. And it was I guess when we started looking into it, people acted like it was a myth, and no, it's not out there.
Okay, and then they'll talk a little bit about how they found the wall. We'll jump to 341.
We finally came across it with the lead of a lady. She told us she remembered her dad going out at the ridge and where they'd have a picnic at the wall and all that, and was able to point us to the ridge she believed it was at. And so with the word of mouth and the research, we were able to go up and stumble across it.
So that's how they found it. They're going to give just a little bit of more information about the wall as they saw it. Again, we already saw a couple of pictures that they shared.
The actual rock that was basically the inscriptions were written on, that actual sedimentary was not indigenous in that area. So that's an interesting fact.
Yeah, that was true. It was red sandstone, which wasn't in the area. So, but yeah, it was pretty remarkable. I mean, it runs 1,000 feet on this ridge line. Most of it's still buried, but only the north end has the inscriptions on the wall. The one.
And then they give additional information related to their theories about where the wall came from and who wrote on it, which isn't as valuable for us. But I do recommend the video in its entirety. I will note here they talk a little bit about how it does indicate to them that there were Hebrews in America anciently.
There's definitely indications that they were here, or I don't have all the puzzle pieces together, but there's something there, with the Hebrew being here at one point, So,
Okay, so that's the video to share on that. Okay, I'll go ahead and stop the sharing there. Okay, so that's what we know about the Chatata Wall. Um, the documentation of the existence of the wall is pretty strong. In that it got quite a bit of attention. There were many people that saw it. Not only did the farmer find it, but he had journalists out there. He had many local people out there. There were quite a number of pictures taken of it, drawings made of it. They had the Smithsonian come out. The Smithsonian did not deny the existence of the wall, but the Smithsonian did deny that the markings on the wall were an ancient writing. They didn't want to go down that road. So it got covered up. People have forgotten about the wall. It's been treated as legend. And there was started to be question of whether the wall really existed. It obviously does exist. There are pictures of the wall with the inscriptions on it, but unfortunately, there's no effort to do any archaeological work or to currently try to translate the inscriptions. So that is the Chatata Wall. It could be another example of ancient Hebrew writings in the Americas that does fit evidence for the Book of Mormon. Anyway, if any of you have additional information on the wall, I'd love to hear it. And if you like the content, I encourage you to like and subscribe. Thank you.